I actually did a few little notes here. I feel a bit here on false pretenses because there's a lot of good pine growers in the audience. They've said they won't heckle, but I'm not so sure. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is pines in general. What I'm saying tonight is what I tend to do. As I said, there's a number of good growers in the audience. I'm sure they do things a bit different to me. This is what I do. How many people are actually growing pines of any sort? So yeah, probably the majority of you are having a go. So that's good. So first up I did was okay. I was really going to launch into this, and David said, well, you've got to run through some basics, because some people don't even know what some of the things are called. Okay, so who knows what a candle is on a pine? So what is it? Someone tell me.
Growing shoot.
The growing shoot. The candle, yeah, you're sort of right, but there's candle shoots and needles. So the candle is what comes out from about September right through spring till December, and the candle comes up as like a candle, really, on the ends of the new growth. The shoot is what once the candle flushes out into full leaf, etc. You can probably then start calling it a shoot. And then what are the needles? The needles are the little guys.
Spiky bits.
Spiky bits, yeah. So, I mean, I could have not mentioned any of that, but some people may not know the difference between a candle, a shoot and a needle. If I could draw it, I had a whiteboard. I can't draw, I haven't got a whiteboard, I could probably draw it. But there's plenty of that information out there on Google or somewhere or other. And the other thing I did tonight was brought a whole lot of the common pines that we're tending to grow as bonsai, at least in Australia. The one I'm going to work on mainly tonight will be black pine, which is this one. Japanese black pines. Who knows why it's called black? Anybody?
Because it's black?
I don't really know myself, but it's called Japanese black pine. So that's a Japanese black. Look, when I started out, people were calling blacks and whites and radiata. I had no idea which is which. But once you get used to it, you start to look at it and you know the needle type and the shoot type and the little growing tip type, and you can pick, that's probably a black of some sort. Now, the trouble is now, of course, there's a lot of varieties coming on board, and they can create some issues as to what they are. So Japanese black pine I've got. The other one, which you don't see a lot of, is the Japanese white pine, which is really, they're a lovely, lovely species. Require a little bit more protection here in Australia. This one faces east, and in most of the hot weather, anything over about 28 degrees is pretty much under shade cloth, 70% shade cloth. And you can see it's got really lovely colour. You can grow them in full sun, but then they go a little bit yellowy. But try and keep a little bit more protection for them. Generally they'll be grafted. This is grafted onto a black pine down about there. But over time, the white pine bark starts to crackle up and they merge in with the graft. Takes about 50 or 60 years, but that's okay. Someone else will get this when it's all up through the tree. But they're a lovely species to work from. Recently I acquired a couple of white pines that were grown on their own roots. And that's going to be a new experience for me because they really don't like to be too wet. They're all right once they're grafted. They're on a black pine rootstock, so you can water them how you would a black pine, which is water them pretty well. But if they're on their own roots, the white pine, you really need to let them dry out a little bit. So they're a little bit more tricky to grow. And I'll get onto them a bit further what you do this time of year with them. So there's white pine, Japanese white pine, Japanese red pine. This one's not mine, this belongs to Jared. I wonder where I can put this. Could someone just grab this one and move it sideways a little bit? Or even just put it down there, John. No, this guy. I'll put it up here later, but we'll just look at the red pine. So this, I didn't bring all different types of pines in because I landed in just too full. So Japanese red pine, and also a nice pine to grow. Probably treat it very similar to what you would a black. And these, I don't know where the red comes from, but they do have a red growing tip. The new tip, if you can come up later and have a look at it, is sort of a reddish colour. So maybe that's where the red comes from. But then if you look at the black, it has a white growing tip. So I'm really not sure. White pine, why is it called white pine? Any idea, Brian?
Because they're white.
They're white, but they're blue.
They have a white stripe.
They do have a bit of a white stripe, so maybe that's where that's coming from. So we've done black, Japanese white, Japanese red, then mugo pine, sort of from Europe. These are also a really nice species to grow. Fairly easy, really. But that's another one we commonly grow in Australia. There's a Scots pine over here, not my tree, it's brought in by Ken. I reckon, I always said if the Japanese had Scots pine growing, I don't think they would have bothered with blacks. Scots are really good, I find, but the needles are short, they're really flexible, so you can bend them. I don't think the maintenance regime is quite as time dependent as what it is for blacks. So Scots pine are really good species to grow. Fairly common now around in Australia, around bonsai circles. So if you can get your hands on some good ones of those. And the other one I bought, which tends to get a lot of, this one here, this is the radiata pine. You know, the common one we're growing is forest trees. This one was collected many, many years ago. They have their drawbacks in that they're always tend to be very woolly looking. But you know, they have great bark. So there's quite a few of those around, well worth growing. I guess if I had my choice, what would I? Well, I do like blacks. I grow blacks. If I had more skills, I'd probably grow a lot more whites. And the mugos are good. So, and the reds. Look, they're all good species. Now, why did I bring all these things in? Because what I'm going to talk about tonight, a lot of tonight, is your maintenance regime for these things. Now, it's different depending on which group the trees fall into. Now, have any of you heard of the terms single flush pines, double flush pines? You know what it means?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Double flush pines, you get 2 flushes of growth per season.
Right. So what we're saying there is when we cut, so I talked before about candles on the black. When we cut the candles in, usually say late November through to mid-December, you can go a bit later, but they're the usual times to cut them. So when the new candle comes out the top, you cut it off and you'll get a new set of candles and shoots develop over the next month and a half, 2 months. So that's what your double flush is. Red pines are also a double flush pine. Same thing there, you can cut the candles right back to where they started and you'll develop a second flush of candles and shoots. White pines are a single flush pine. So you can't go back into these and cut the candles back to where they originated. You've got to leave some new needles on there. You can snap the candle in half or cut it in half, but you can't take them right back. Otherwise, the whole shoot will die back to the next bud. If you don't have a bud behind it, you'll lose that whole branch. So they're, in that way they're perhaps a little bit less forgiving, but if you know how they're going to grow, they're still fairly easy to maintain. And they're not as time dependent on when you do cut these things back. I mean, if you snap them out just after the candles or just before the candles emerge, that's fine. If you miss that time, you can cut them back later anyhow, and you haven't really lost anything. Mugo pines are a single flush pine, but I find they're not as tricky to grow as the whites. I've found with these, particularly this one, now there's probably a number of varieties of mugos out there, but I find I can cut the new candle of this one right back to where it started, and I will get buds around the base, whereas if I did that with this single flush pine, the white pine, that wouldn't happen. So mugos are good. At least this one is very good in that regard. What else have I got? Scots I find pretty much the same, pretty much single flush, and I tend to, depending on where I want the branch to go, I'll either cut it off at the base and get some new shoots right at the base of the candle where it was cut off, or if I want it to extend a bit, I might just break it off halfway through. So Scots I find are a fairly easy one to grow. Radiata, what else have I got? I've got here, okay, we're talking about double flush a bit earlier. I've mentioned the two common ones, red and black. There are some other double flush pines. I'm growing one, the Aleppo pine. Anybody heard of that one? I think it's one attributed to being the lone pine from Gallipoli area, although that's could be a little bit under. I think the one that they brought back and they planted all around the RSLs was a Aleppo pine seed, and I think the reason that happened was the diggers, or whatever they were called then, brought back some branches of Aleppo pine. But I think the actual lone pine that was on the cliff was Pinus gutio, I think. So either one we could call the lone pine. Another one I'm growing single flush, we've mentioned mugo, Scots and whites, is a jack pine. There's not many of those around. I grow one, which is a really nice tree, but it's probably the northernmost growing pine in the world. It sort of grows up around northern Canada, even into Alaska, I think. And it's really easy to grow. It's a bit like a Scots pine in the way you grow it. Now, that's covered all those sort of single flush, double flush pines. Then you've got radiata. I'm still trying to figure out what it is. I call it a multi-flush pine. I think you can cut it sort of like, cut the candles back any time of the year. And provided you've got needles, if you cut into the needles, you'll generally get buds. But unlike, say, black reds and blacks and mugos and whites to some extent, I find it really hard to get it to bud back onto bare wood. It'll bud back easily where I've got needles, but in bare wood, I find it really hard to get it to bud back. But well worth growing because of the bark. So any questions on that, the multi-flush, double flush, single flush? I mean, it sounds all really scary at the moment. Why would I grow a pine with all these? Yeah, Tom.
There's one other pine that buds back very easily, and that's Pinus pinea, the stone pine.
Stone pine, yeah. I have grown stone pine. The only thing I don't like about it is the needle type. It seems to have a bit of a twist through it, which I don't like. And I was talking to Brian earlier, you can get some, and in fact I think David, that white pine you've got down there has got a bit of a twist in the needle, which to me is not hugely attractive. If you want getting a white, try and get one with a nice straight needle. That's my only problem with stone pine, Tom.
I inherited one and it was grown with just a juvenile.
Yes.
Because I kept on cutting it back.
Yes.
Yes. But it really died, so I never had it.
And I think I've seen that done with radiata too, just cut back continually and you've just got juvenile foliage. But the one that I saw that done with frequently, I think it just debilitated the tree so much in the end that it really, I don't think it's alive anymore. Maybe that doesn't happen with stone pine, but it certainly did with the radiata.
With radiata, you just pull out the mature needles and it'll regrow juvenile.
Yeah, but as I said, I don't know that doing that over a long term. Maybe you've had success, but I've seen others that haven't. I'll get into it later, but I tend to treat my radiators a little bit like I treat blacks, just some of the timing's a little bit different. So pines, yeah, so that covers all those basic things. Pine maintenance. Now, this is where everybody gets a little bit worried about what do we do. And generally it's just, pines are kind of easy in that you're only working on them twice a year, really. That's if you've only got one of them. If you've got 60 or 70 of them, like I've got, or you're working on them all year. But generally you're only working on them twice a year. Once when you're doing the candle pruning, which is, you know, a summer pruning thing, early summer pruning thing. And there's this time of year where you're doing needle plucking. I'll call it needle plucking or needle pulling for want of a better word. And that can be done from about now right through to, I guess, July, late July, when the shoots start to move again. So really you're only looking at 2 top bits of maintenance on them. So in that way they're a lot easier. I grow a lot of natives and I'm continually every couple of weeks I'm pruning. So every week some of them are pruning back. So the pines in that regard are kind of easy, but come needle plucking time, it's a very tedious job if you've got a lot of them. It's well worth doing because the tree looks really good once it's done, but it's quite tedious. And I'll get into needle plucking in a minute on a black pine, but you can also do it on what you should also be doing it on reds. You're going to be doing it on this, on the whites. Mugo pine, this one I don't really needle pluck. I spent maybe just this afternoon when I thought I was bringing it in here, and all I did was just cleaned out the dead needles. There was a mass of dead needles in there, and they just got in there. We got my fingers around a bit, they started dropping out. And that's pretty much all I do on that. I guess you could go through and pull out the old needles, but it's just, I don't think it's needed. I think this tree looks pretty good as it is. There's still probably a lot of dead needles in there, but I've got the bulk of them out. There's a few I haven't. So that's all I do on that. So on a mugo pine, cutting the new shoot back to where it started, and then I'll get a ring of new shoots around that. If I was really fussy, I'd probably only keep 2 of those new shoots, but I don't tend to worry too much about that. I might sort it out at various different times just when I work on it, but I don't concentrate on just making it 2 shoots, and then just leaving the old needles, cleaning them out every once or twice a year. So really easy to maintain. If you come up later, you'll see on this top shoot up here, I know you can't see that with the camera, probably pretty hard. It's only, I don't think I've got this one wired in, so you might get this in your lap, Dave. That shoot there, it's pretty hard to see, but there's probably about 5 or 6 little shoots around where I've cut the big candle out. It's showing up, probably not too small.
No, it's working.
You can see it? So you'll find that through it on some of the strong shoots I've cut out. There might be 4 or 5 little shoots growing around the top there. And in theory I probably should thin those out, but I know I won't. It's just how it happens. Okay, so maintenance. Twice a year, candle pruning was set in early summer. Needle plucking and pulling is what we're going to do tonight. And this time of year, once you've done your needle pulling, you've opened the tree up nicely. You can see the tree a lot better because all the old needles are gone. And that's also the time you're going to do your design work, shaping work, wiring work, because you can see the tree. You can also, I do it sometimes on some of the blacks, okay, let's think about this. If, for instance, I'll do it with this red. If I've gone through and cut out all the candles in summer, I'm back at the point that I was when I plucked out the needles because I've just cut out all the new grass. So that's also a good time to wire because you're almost back at the same framework as you would have been when you plucked out all the needles. Is that making any sense? So that's also another time you can wire and shape trees, sort of early summer. Right, so we're talking this time of year. So we're talking about needle pulling. I'm going to do it on that black down there. Jamie, I might get you to shift this one. You go that, so I'll grab this one. I do want to thank Jared and Ken for bringing in their trees, because I just couldn't fit enough in the car tonight. Okay, you look at this black, it's a pretty nice little tree. If you go down and look at the Namari there, it's got some nice movement up through the trunk. But the foliage is very, very all over the place. Now, why has that happened? I cut the candles early last summer, early December, but there would have been some really small ones that I missed, and that's what these really long ones are. They didn't get cut, so they continued to grow and produce the long needles, whereas the shorter needles are coming from where I did cut the candle properly, or I can see it. And I've got short needles there, for instance, on that little shoot there, as compared to, right next to it, are really long needles. So the fact that this has got so many long needles on, I was obviously rushing through this one and missed a lot. Otherwise, probably bored out of my brain doing it, because got tired of doing it properly. But it doesn't really matter. So what I'll do now, I'll go back and needle pluck some of the look, if I was here, you were here to watch me needle pluck this, we would be here for hours. It is quite time consuming. So what I'm going to go through is to take out the old needles, and anywhere I see 3 shoots growing, I'll keep the 2 best, or if I see 4 shoots growing, I'll keep the 2 best shoots. Now, what are the best shoots? Anybody tell me? If I've got, I don't know, let's see if we can find one. Okay, it's going to be hard for you to see, but that little shoot there, which my fingers are around, is that going to come up, Dave? Probably not. It's got 3 shoots on it, right? I cut the candle and then 3 shoots developed around the candle, and now I'm ready to, so which 2 am I going to keep?
2 lateral. 2 the same size.
2 almost horizontal, lateral. Someone said lateral? Yeah. 2 horizontal ones or lateral ones, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for our branches to come out like this. So why would we pick one and one going straight up? It would just mean we'd have to wire it round. If we've already got the option of having 2 and they're going to grow in the right direction, that's the 2 I'm going to pick. So I would go through this tree, plucking out, and anywhere internally there where I've had some back budding, and I've got 3 here. There's that one right back internal, and it's a really long one. So it was clearly just a little bud last December when I came to do this, and I either missed it or thought, no, I can't be bothered, or there was no point. But now it extended into long needles. So that was right back internally in there. So, and it was at the junction of 2 branches, so that made sense just now, just to get rid of that. So now you just go through plucking out, and there's another one there with 3 at one point. I've kept the 2 laterals, and I'll go through and just take out the old needles. And I usually use a pair of tweezers, and it's good. It's best to start at the top of the tree, because that way you obviously you're automatically cleaning the tree as you work your way down.
Do you want us to come in and have a look, maybe?
Yep. So you're going to start at the top of the tree, and the top of the tree is really awkward because you've got things all over the place. But you go through and pluck out the old needles, and it, like I said, it is very time consuming. And at the top, you're probably going to pluck out every needle.
Why are you using the tweezers instead of your hands?
Because I can get into them more easily. If I go with my hands, I'm likely to damage some of the buds. And these needles, this is April, so these needles are still a little bit soft. I started needle plucking about a week ago, and the first tree I took out was probably growing in a slightly shaded position, so the shoots hadn't really, the needles and shoots hadn't really hardened off as well as I would have liked.
So would it be better to do it a bit later than April?
If you can. I mean, if you've got a lot of trees, you've got to start sometime. Or if you only got one, yes, wait a little bit. I've got quite a lot of big ones, and they take a lot of time to do, and it's very tedious.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could go. You've asked a good question. Sometimes when I'm down the bottom here, I'll go through and just pull out all the old needles that are hanging down by hand, and I can get in there much more easily. But at the top, you've got branches coming up all over the place. It's much harder to get in there to do that. So I use a pair of tweezers. You can, if you want, rather than plucking, you can go and just cut the old needles. And that works just as well. It's not the tree doesn't look quite as clean, but it has the advantage, I guess, if you cut above the sheath, of getting some back budding if you want it. But what I've found is, I think I just get enough natural back budding that you get to a stage where the tree needs thinning out because you've got so many buds in there. So I don't do a lot of it by cutting, but you can if you're more confident to do it that way, or it's a bit quicker. Although I don't really find it a lot quicker. But yeah, you can go through and just cut out the needles. I mean, this tree, if I did the whole job, will probably take me a good day, I think. By the time I took all the needles out, then assess what, if anything, needs to be wired. What, if anything, needs to have wire removed. You know, I can actually see if there's any wire cutting in. And there will be on all these trees, I'm sure I'll have wire cutting in, so don't look too closely. The worst one for having wire cutting at the moment is the whites, because they have quite a soft bark and a smooth bark. It eventually grows out. The blacks grows out quite quickly. So, so you go through thinning out the tree, and I can probably come up later on and look at a little bit of what I'm doing.
When you're not cutting hard against the bark, are you?
I'm leaving the sheath a little bit. Yeah. So Jared's asked. Well, that's what I suggested before. If I leave the sheath, I might get some budding where that needles will cut off, but as I said, I find I've got enough buds there anyhow that I'm not really looking to have too many more buds there, because I've just got to go in and thin the whole lot out anyhow, usually.
Presumably you could pluck them at the top of the tree and cut them at the bottom if you needed more back budding in the lower.
You could do that,
branches
yes,
as well.
if you wanted to pluck at the top and cut at the bottom. Yep. I think, I don't know, I mean, we hear all the talk about, trying to get back budding and that, and yet I find I end up going back in here and thinning a lot of this stuff out because it's just too dense in there. So I don't worry too much. I don't know if you can see that one, Dave. There's a little bud that's developed in there at that point. Now, it wouldn't have been there last year. It's at a junction there, so I'd come out. Can't need it. And I find that happens quite a bit.
There you go, show us now.
Oh, I've got rid of it, have I? It's gone.
Too quick.
See if I can find another one. Yeah, look, even in here, that's got two sort of buds on top of that one that's growing vertically, and there's a whole lot of stuff above it. I don't really think I'm going to need that. I'm not going to pull it out right now, but that's the sort of thing I'd assess as I work my way through the tree. What in here? There's so much that's right back in here, and I don't really need a lot of that stuff. So I can probably just cut that out. I have wired it for some reason. I must have decided early on I wanted, but I know I don't want it now. There's some more little shoots there developed, and they're usually got the longer needles on it. Pull those out. So now what happens if and I'll do it anyhow, if this tree was going into the show, and I've got a spot that I've got long needles and I want to keep them, just cut the needles and shorten the needles back to the same size as the overall size of the smaller needles. I don't know whether that's a kosher thing to do, but I do it. I know there's always a bit of discussion, he's cut the needles, he's done that. But I've seen photos of trees, maybe not at Kokofu, which is the top Japanese show, but certainly the top European shows, at least the photos. I've never been to one of these, but at least the photos you can see they've cut needles. So I don't see it's a big problem with it. People have said, well, if you cut the needles, you can order the foliage straight afterwards and they don't tend to brown off. I haven't found that. I think they eventually brown off anyhow. I don't see that you can stop that.
So Quentin, these techniques you're showing us, they're on refined trees, not developing trees?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, so David's right. I'm not going to go around and needle pluck and candle prune a tree that I'm still developing, which is probably this one here. You've seen enough of me needle plucking that one. Yeah, put the other one up. So if you got that one, Jamie, yep.
Thanks, Jamie.
Really ugly tree. I'm not even pretending that it's a good tree. I don't know why I acquired it, I did. Interestingly though, the person who I got it from, I think it was this branch here. They brought this branch down here and brought it through here and done an approach graft. You can see this part through here. And when I got it, I just removed this approach graft. So I did all that work and I've removed it. Look, I could probably do some incredible bend here and bring this down, but the trunk is quite taperless. The only thing I liked about it was the root system, the exposed roots, and I thought, well, how can I utilise those? And I thought, and because I got the tree and it didn't cost very much and I didn't have much love for it, I was really abused it. I think it was probably July, August. And there was a few roots I could see up to about here. And the whole lot was in a big polystyrene box. So it's pretty much almost, didn't quite bare root it, but I was pretty aggressive with it. Put a bit of rope around the roots under here. If you come up there, you can still see the top of the rope there. I don't know if you can see that, David. There's a bit of, that's a bit of rope. Is that coming up? Little red centre. So I put some rope around it and then pulled all the roots in, lassoed them in and tightened them up. And not expecting the thing to survive really. But it has. And I thought, okay, it's still not great. I think come next July I'll end up potting it more at that angle, and that whole top's going to go. Mind, keep in mind that's not going to be there. It'll be ginned off, and I'll have to shari down here. And I'll expose the roots a little bit more, and it'll turn out to be still an ugly tree. That's okay. So that's the plan with this. And David's right. Now I'm not going to go through and do all these refinement techniques on this tree, but if you're bringing a tree along on,
Just wondering how far up you would gin after that bottom branch.
Yeah, that's a good point. Look, probably I'll keep that. They're too high, I think. I'll probably come down to about here somewhere. Obviously, I'll have to put some work into the gin to make it look interesting, but yeah, I'll work that out in time. But probably somewhere about here. Because remember, it's going to be tilted around about there. You know, maybe that gin could feature, I don't know, but somewhere around about that area. Yeah, so this tree is not in refinement, but if you're coming in on Sunday and you have a tree like this, instead of wasting your whole time getting it ready to be worked on, do some preparation before you come. And that will involve pretty just much just going through with your scissors. You're going to, okay, what can we see here? Let's look at this branch for instance. So we've got shoots here, shoots here, but we've got a whole lot of old needles in this part. So just pull all those out. You either cut them off or pull them off, because whoever's going to help you on Sunday is going to say, okay, look, we need to be able to see the tree for a start, and then you need to be able to wire it. So obviously with all these needles in the way, wiring becomes really difficult. You know, there is it's a technique, and I'm sure some of the older growers have used it. If you wanted, say a shoot here somewhere from the branch, you could leave two needles or a couple of needles at that point in the hope that one of those might develop into a bud eventually, and then a shoot and then a branch. But I'm going to show you a bit later on how we can avoid that, because we'll do a little bit of grafting. Now, it's the wrong time. Now, this is what I do. There might be others in the group here that graft at different times, but what I'm going to show you is what I would do to graft this, but I would do it in August, mid-August. So just before the sap starts to grow too quickly. So that's what I want you to come along with on Sunday, with all the branches thinned out like that. So all the old needles gone. You don't have to make this. You can see there's 4 shoots here. I'm not asking you to, or 5, is there? 4. I'm not asking you to make any choices on the shoots, because we can do that when you come in, when we work out where the trees are going to go. But the needles between those areas there, you can easily clean those out when you get home, and it'll save you a lot of time on the day. You don't want to be spending your whole time on Sunday just doing stuff that you could have done at home. I mean, if you're unsure, that's fine. Bring it in and we'll work our way through with you. But it's not that hard.
So is that all the needles in the internodes?
Yeah, and they're essentially old needles, yes. That's the ones on the internodes, yeah. So then we can get our wire in and do whatever we need to do with it. I mean, if this had better taper and that, I could maybe bend this down and create something there. But like I said, I didn't really have a great affection with this tree, and I thought, we'll just, the best part that I liked was the roots. So I thought, okay, if I want to have the main focus of the tree on the roots, I might as well have the tree fairly low, down somewhere near where the roots are.
Flat pine suitable for air layering?
Yeah, well, that's what Jamie said to me. He said, could you air layer it? Yes, you could, Colin. But where would you air layer this? You tell me. No, just out of interest. If you're going to air layer, would you air layer it here?
Higher.
No?
Higher.
Higher?
Yeah.
Higher.
Here? Someone said yeah?
Yeah.
Higher. Who said yeah? Okay, we'll ignore that one.
Spin it for us?
I think. Look, if you put an air layer here, Irene, you could do it, but you've still got a pretty long taperless bit. If I was to air layer it, I'd be looking to put it on here somewhere, I think. So I can then have a sort of a little semi-cascade tree up there. So you could easily do that. Now, Peter Fuster, where are you? This would take a long time to get an air layer on this sort of wood, wouldn't it? I mean, I know you do it on the blacks you do that are fairly young wood and you're growing them quickly, but I'm imagining on this it could take, 12 months longer, 2 years?
It might take you 12 months, might not, but the higher you go, the newer the wood
yes.
you're working with, the faster.
If I was on this sort of wood, maybe, but on this, going to take a lot longer, I think. But look, if you wanted to do that, you could air layer that off. I don't want to do that. Someone makes me an offer tonight, it's theirs. They can try the air layering. But yeah, look, air layering black pines is fine, can be done. As I said, Peter does a lot of them on a lot of those minis that he brings in to sell at the auction nights. I always bid for them, I always get outbidded, unfortunately. Not looking at you. Yeah, so pluck out all that sort of growth. This I'm not going to touch because this is where I'm eventually going to make the tree out of. So I have put some wire on it a month or two ago, which is probably the wrong thing to have done because I put the wire on it and these buds are still quite soft, so I did knock a few of them around putting the wire on, but I did it anyhow. I think most of them are okay, but that's where the tree's going to come from. Right, so we got back to what David was saying. You wouldn't do all this refinement work on a tree like this because it's just not ready for that sort of thing. This needs to have the basic structure put into the tree, the basic branches need to be there before you do any of that sort of work. So that's black pine. So we've talked a little bit about needle plucking on them. We're not going to do any more of the needle plucking, but it's essentially you're removing the old needles. Now, if the tree is not super, you've needle plucked for 3 or 4 years in a row and you've candle pruned and you maybe haven't fed it for as well as you should have, and the new needles are not particularly long or strong, it's not going to hurt to go a season without needle plucking. You can think, okay, I'm not going to needle pluck it. It needs to have a season where it's got a good number of needles on to feed the tree again. But I wouldn't miss a season of candle pruning, because as soon as you stop candle pruning, that shoot extends and you start to lose your ramification, if you like. So I think you candle prune pretty much all the time, every year, but you don't need to needle pluck every year. Yeah, does that make a bit of sense or not? That one's healthy enough to be fully needle plucked. This is obviously just rubbish, but yeah. So you can, if time is not with you, you can avoid your needle plucking if you want.
Is it important to leave old needles?
Sorry?
Is it important to leave old needles?
Okay, so is it important to leave old needles, Jared's asked? And yes, I think it is, particularly in some of the weaker areas of the tree. I don't think you need to take out every single old needle. You know, at the top where it's growing quite strongly, you might take out everything, but if you have a look down the bottom there, certainly back in close to the shaded areas, you might leave a lot of the older needles there. And as I said, if the whole tree was fairly weak, I might not needle pluck that. I think what is imperative if you want to get good results with candle pruning, needle pulling, all that, is to feed your trees well. Now, when do you feed and how do you feed? Okay. Generally, what will happen, you'll feed your trees from, say, about now through sort of late autumn, we'll say winter, spring. And then just before you're going to do your candle pruning, which is early, when's that?
Early December.
Early December. So just before you do your candle pruning, you're going to remove the feed or stop feeding, because what the candle pruning, you're doing that so you get a whole new fresh lot of shoots, but you want to reduce the needle size. So you've gone from a single candle, which might have quite long needles, you cut it back and you might get three or four shoots, so that the needle length reduces. And that's what we're looking for, is to try and get the needle size down. We don't want all the needles to be long like that, we want them to be the shorter size. So you don't want a lot of food going to them just before your candle prune or afterwards. So you feed up until candle pruning time, or a week or two before that, remove the feed or stop feeding. Then you candle prune, then you just let the whatever's going to happen with them till about now maybe, then you can start feeding again right through to the next candle pruning time. I guess my biggest problem is I probably don't feed enough, and that's maybe why some of my trees which I've needle plucked and candle pruned every year for a long time, probably I might not do some of them this year because the needles are not, I mean you want short needles but you don't want really weak needles either. So they're probably at a stage where I can let some of them go for 12 months.
What do you feed with?
Okay, what do I feed with? I don't, and this is just for visual things, I don't like the tea bags full of whatever people put in the tea bags. I don't like that because it just looks horrible, but it probably works very well. I just used, this power feed for tomato and vegetables, I think it is, and there's power feed for citrus and fruit trees, I think. And I just mix those two together. It has not a really low nitrogen, but fairly low nitrogen. And I just mix those two together. You can get both those products at Bunnings. And I like using them because they're sort of a brown colour. You don't see the little balls sitting on top of your soil. So that's what I tend to use. I don't liquid feed. I'm not saying anything wrong with liquid feed, but it takes a long time to get around the whole collection. I do water a few trees with liquid feed, things like maybe elms, which grow rapidly, maybe some of the olives, some of the other broadleaf evergreens, but a lot of stuff I don't use liquid feed on because it just takes too long. So just slow release really, power feed, slow release. I think one is in a sort of purple container, one's in a red container. You'll see it. One's tomato and vegetables and the other's fruit and citrus, something like that. I just use that. And it seems to do a good job. Okay, so radiatas. So I tend to treat them, I'm not going to do anything on this tonight, I tend to treat them like I would a black, and I'm here to be corrected on this. I find that the radiatas start maybe about a month earlier than these guys, so I tend to do the candle pruning in maybe mid-November. I don't do a lot of needle plucking on it. It's almost like the mugo. I just thin out some of the dead needles on it. I could probably do it because you can see it's very woolly, but each of those little shoots, there's a lot of them, probably what it needs is probably a thinning out. But each of those little shoots doesn't have a lot of needles around it, it's just that there's so many of them. So start about a month earlier than you would your blacks, and then just through the season I just tend to, if we get a long candle, I just cut it short or cut it out again. Like I said, it seems to be multi-flush. Back when I started, there was a guy called John Narker. I'm sure some of you older growers have heard of him. He felt with his blacks, everything I've said tonight, but if he had a shoot that came up 2 inches or 1.5 inches through the second flush, he would snap off in half. I tend not to do much of that unless there's something really strong, long and strong at the apex. I don't. But if you want to, you can do that. Now whites. Same deal on the whites. You're gonna take out the old needles. Now we can because we've got new needles there, and they're usually pretty easy because they're just about ready to drop out. And if you want to cut back, you can't cut back unless you've got buds behind them, and that's sometimes not it. See, this sheet here is pretty long and ugly, but I don't have much or anything really to cut back to there. There's not. I don't think I've got a bud in there. I don't. So that one I'm going to have to assess when I've got everything off, and if I'm going to rewire it, do I actually cut it off altogether, or can it be wired into a position that's going to work? There are spots here where I've got 3 shoots, and I can certainly remove one of them. I saw them before, but I can't see it right now. Yeah, I don't want to just go and cut wildly. Yeah, so you've got to be a little bit careful. But you can go through easily and take out the old needles, and if you leave it a little bit longer in the season, they actually come out really easy. And this one I do, I think it was Marie who asked, why don't I use my... I do pretty much just do it with my fingers on this. You can, if you want, go through and cut really short, which might be better. If you do it early in the season, they can bleed fairly badly, so you can go and cut the old needles really short, and that way they won't bleed. But if you wait till later in the season, they just seem to fall out quite easily. And then you've got to get in and have a look and see, do I need to remove any growth? Can I wire stuff into position? I mean, I tend to do it every year on this, but come this time of year, it seems to have a lot of things growing where I don't want them to grow. I'm not quite sure why that happens, but it does.
Quentin, how long do you leave your wire on your whites?
Yeah, look, there's wire cutting in on this guy. It's much, look, it just depends. I mean, there's some that's been on too long there, which I'll cut off when I get round to needle pulling them. But I don't take it off unless it's got to come off. And I don't go through and take it all off if it doesn't need it. I probably should be a bit more vigilant and take it off more often, but because it does cut into the whites fairly quickly, and it takes a lot longer for it to grow out.
Does the bark benefit from the sacrifice branch? Like, would that help the bark develop quicker, or does the bark just take a long time anyway?
Oh no, I think if you let the branch grow, it probably the wire marks would grow out much more quickly. Yeah. But then of course, if it's at the top of the tree, you don't want the branch getting too thick either. So it's a bit of a balance how you do it. I guess the thing is, who only had one pine? Someone here only had one pine. That's what you do. Just have one pine, and then you can look at it all perfectly all the time. All right. So Scots pines I do much the same as I do here. On a more open tree like that, I might go through and thin out some of the old needles on this tree. Obviously, it happened naturally. Okay, that sort of covers needle pruning and candle pruning, all that sort of stuff. This is the time of year if we're gonna, and we're gonna have workshops this Sunday. This is the time of year you probably, and right through winter, it's the best time to do your design work and your wiring work, and your jigs and sharis. So from now through till say August, that's when you're going to do gins and sharis, you're going to do any heavy bend. Now this is what I do, but I'm sure if Han was here, he does a lot of his bending in the middle of summer, and we've seen his trees. He gets fabulous bends in them and does great trees. He does a lot of things, what I would have said was out of season once, but he grows a lot of pines, and he grows a lot of good pines, so I'm not prepared to say he does it the wrong way. I think this is what I do, but it's not the only way of doing it. He would look at this and say, I can bend that down here, no problem. He do his flexible thing and bend it down there without any issues. But he's unique. I really like Han. I like the way he grows his trees. So if you're going to do any, which you will be on Sunday, doing some design work under guidance if you need it, pruning, wiring, this is a good time to be doing that. We talked about speeding, doing that at the right time of year.
How often do you feed?
Well, because it's slow release, Jim, I only do it I'd probably put some on now, say. And then I have the last few years, if I do repot a tree, I'll put a little bit in the mix when I repot, and repotting I usually do sort of mid-August.
Mid-August you repot?
Mid-August, yeah. Han, I think, does it, he likes to do it in May. There's another difference, but he gets good results. So, yeah, it's just different ways of doing things. Yes, I've been putting the slow release in the mix, or just in the bottom of the pot or something, and then just potting on top of it. It seems to work okay. I haven't had any issues doing that. I know when I first started horticulture, don't feed them for 6 weeks after you repotted, all that sort of stuff, but I haven't noticed any problems. I mean, I know it's slow release, so it's probably not going to give the problems if you put, a liquid feed or a dry rapid feed on it. That might create problems for the roots, but the slow release doesn't seem to cause any problems. So let's say I feed maybe once, twice a year, Jim. It's not enough, but that's what I do. Pests and diseases. Okay. I just noticed this tonight. I probably shouldn't have put it in with all the other pines, but I had a bit of white pine mite. It's called white pine mite, but I think it's only white pine mite because that was the first species it was identified on. It's what's called an adelgid. It's sort of almost a cross between a mite and an aphid almost. And it's a suck-sapping thing and can debilitate the trees quite badly. I didn't see it so much on the shoots here. Maybe I cleaned it off of those, but I did see it actually on the bark up here. If you come up later, I have tried to rub it off. I was not going to even mention it, pretending that my trees are all clean and healthy and everything. But then I noticed it wasn't. So that's one thing you need to control. What I have heard various techniques of doing it. Hose it off with a strong hose water. I'm sure that works to some degree. Dab it with methylated spirits. I'm not going to do that. It takes me so long. I don't do that. I do the non-environmentally safe way and use Confidor, or what it's called, imidacloprid, it's called these days. But I don't do it when the bees are foraging. They tell me not to do that. And that seems to clean up. One spray, and then maybe 10 days later, that seems to clean it up. I might hose off what I can see prior to putting it on, let it dry, and then I'll put the spray on. That seems to control it. As I said, this tree is not one of my favourites, so I really haven't been very vigilant with that one. The other thing you might have, and it's not really common, obviously you get caterpillars on them. Everything gets caterpillars. You can usually just get rid of those by hand because you don't get many on them. And then there's a couple of fungal problems. Needle cast is one, and you get little bands of yellow and brown across the needle. I don't have anything to show you, which I'm glad about. Just across the needle, it's called needle cast, and it'll eventually cause the needle to drop off. If you do nothing about it and have it on for a number of years, maybe you could lose the tree. It'll certainly debilitate the tree. Another fungal problem is needle blight, which is a sort of another needle thing that has yellowing more up the sides of the needle. And there's one I learned the other day called diplodia, which I don't have, which is good. But you get on the tips of the shoots there, you'll find a whole lot of yellowing around, right where the new shoots coming. All those needles around there will be yellow. You'll sort of half of the needle will become yellow, right around there. Now they're all fungal problems, usually able to be fixed up with copper sprays of some sort, and they're easily obtained. Coside is usually the easy copper spray to use. Potting. So I generally pot in mid-August. I don't do it very often, particularly on a mature tree. You might go David was telling me the other day his radiata, he potted for the first time in 10 years. I don't recommend that, but that's what it can happen. I probably aim for 4 or 5 years, roughly, on sort of this sort of tree, that tree. The radiata here, I don't know when I last repotted that. I can't even find the tag anymore. But it's a long time since that's been repotted. So let's say 4 or 5 years. This one you're growing quickly, you might do every couple of years because you want to have it growing rapidly and quickly, so you want to have fresh soil pushed along. And do it in mid-August if you've got the choice. If you really potting. Okay. If the tree's looking really sick for whatever reason, you can probably do it any time, but obviously you need to do that with care. Maybe you put it into a slightly bigger container. Just do a little bit of work around the roots and maybe put it into a protected spot for a while. You just got to do that. If the tree's sick, that's when you've got to do it. And what sort of mixes are we going to use? I pretty much from a number of years now have used the mix that Damien used to supply the club with. We're hoping he still will be able to. So that's what I tend to use. There is another source of his similar mix to his, which I'll probably use, or I did buy a lot the other day, because you need your potting mix. Damien can't supply it. I hope he can. You might have to source it elsewhere. I know there's a couple of sources around. There's David Smith from down Geelong Way. I'm sure he can be contacted if you needed to get mix from him. There's Bonsai Roots, Dino. You know Dino? I don't know what Dino's surname is. He also has mixes. And look, if you got into trouble, I looked at the mix that Garden World had, and that looked okay. So you've got to have a mix of some sort. But so that's the mix I've been using with Damien's, and I was happy to use every plant I've got in that. I don't. If it's a mix I've got a sieve, I don't use it. I'm not doing any sieving. If it's a mix I've got to use for this tree and a different mix for that tree and a different one, I'm not using that one. One mix for everything I grow. It mightn't be perfect for this and where it might be perfect, but that doesn't matter. Is it the difference going to make that much difference? I don't think so. So I just use the one mix, make my life as easy as I can. And if it's pre-mixed like Damien's was and what David Smith says, all the better. I don't have to do any work there either. I know a lot of people do make their own mixes up. They have this and they have some diatomite, they have some scoria, they have some pumice, they have some orchid nuggets, and they have them to certain, 2 parts of this, one of this, one of this, and one of that. I used to do that, but it's just too hard. So find a mix you're happy with and just use that. The only one I'm a bit worried about now is I've acquired these couple of white pines that are on their own roots, not grafted. I think I'm going to use just an inorganic mix with those. I'm not going to use one that's got pine nuggets in or cocoa peat. I'm just going to use it. It's going to have maybe pumice, scoria, lava rock, what's the other one? Akadama, that sort of thing. That's probably what I use on those because they don't want to get wet. Sorry, Mel, you had a question?
That was my question that I was going to ask. How much organic mix do you use in the mixes that you just sort of said? Yeah,
I don't even know what Damien was putting in. Originally I was using, when I first came up with my mix, it was 2 parts diatomite, 2 parts orchid mix, and I think 1 part cocoa peat. And then mixes sort of developed from there. Diatomite went off and was pretty lousy, so people started using pumice and things like that.
So that the organic ratio, you're saying if you have organic mix in the
probably
mix,
no more than a third would be organic, I would think.
Okay, yeah, great.
And whatever you get those inorganics from, you can choose, but I wouldn't have too much inorganic stuff in your mix these days. But there's, I don't know like David Allen's not here tonight, but he has a mix and he seems to grow his trees pretty well, and it seems to have a lot of organics in it. So, look, I said to someone tonight, I could probably just go and pot it up from soil in the garden. And if I water diligently, I'm sure they will grow pretty well. It's just that, you know, we have so many trees, we almost just want to walk past water the whole lot and not have to think about it. So that's why we tend to have pretty well draining mixes. And that's why I want the white pine on its own roots mix, because I don't really want to have to think too much about how much and when I water it. Okay, what I'm going to do now is just show you some grafting technique that I use. I don't say I use it terribly well, but it's what I've been having a crack at in the last couple of years.
Quentin, just quickly before you do.
Yep.
With the bottom half of that tree, you talked about how you were going to tilt it and all the rest. What's the next step for the foliage?
Well, it's all wide. I've got, okay.
Because you're not doing needle
No,
plucking and
I'll
the
pretty
rest,
much
so-
probably do almost what I did up here.
Okay.
Just, strip out all the needles I don't want, and I'll fully wire it. I've only wired some major branches, so I'll fully wire it. And that'll be the crown of it. This will be sort of a drop branch here.
Yeah.
It'll be over like that somehow or other. And the branching of it was pretty much all there. So
really, it's just you're going to clear out old needles and just wire it.
Yes.
That's the only thing that you do at this stage for that.
Yeah, look,
Okay.
I suppose I could go through Shane and just grab those and shorten the long needles back a little bit. Not the ones I've cleaned out. I'm cleaning out the old ones, but the ones I'm going to keep.
Yes.
I could, my friend Don DeLuca up in Hay calls it bibs and bobs it. I don't know what bibs and bobs it, but that's what he says he does to it. He's bibbed and bobbed it, he says. Okay, good on you, Don. I'm glad you've done that.
Would
So that's
there
what
be
I'll do.
any advantage to do that other than the cosmetic? It would look
Cosmetics
better
mainly.
with the shorter needles.
Yeah, cosmetics mainly. I mean, it's probably better to leave them long because you've got more foliage there if you like to do what foliage does, create sugars and carbohydrates, all that sort of stuff back through there. But it's really just a cosmetic thing. But that will happen probably in the spring, just before I tip this over at a different angle, expose a few more roots. That's another thing too. I'm probably not doing the right thing by this tree, but because I don't have a great attachment to it. You really shouldn't do, we call it two insults to the tree in a year. So obviously repotting to that degree is an insult to the tree. So maybe I shouldn't do anything to the rest of it. I think it's all right to do just standard needle plucking and minor stuff and repot. That's not an issue. But if you're doing major stuff, styling and repotting, you are pushing the tree quite a bit. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I was going to do some grafting here. And I think this is where we fall down a bit in Australia. I think we're getting pretty good now at shaping trees, designing trees, maintaining trees, all that sort of stuff within the limits we can. We can't go and dig out marvellous mugo pines or white pines from the forest, that sort of stuff. But with what we can get from nurseries, I think we do pretty well. But I think where we do fall down a bit is we don't use grafting as well as we should. Now, I'm not going to try and graft into this sort of wood. I'm going to graft on this sort of wood. And it's not the right time of year to do grafting. Like I said, it's mid-August you do it. But I'll just show you what I do. And we'll just have a go. It probably won't take, and it doesn't matter because I don't want any of this anyhow up here. So it doesn't really matter if I do some damage to that. I'll put me in bucket.
Over by the other ones.
There are a few things that you will need. This stuff here has been a real revelation for grafting, for me. You use this stuff, Peter? I think you do, don't you? I was at Peter's, I don't know, last summer sometime, and he said he had used this stuff, but he ran out of was using glad wrap in the end. I thought, oh, okay, works with glad wrap, so I don't know why I'm bothering with this. But anyhow, Peter uses glad wrap sometimes. So what?
What's in the box?
What is it?
Okay, it's a grafting tape. You can get two types. There's this one, which has little serrations across it every 70 mil, and you get that. And that should be enough. You can just stretch it a little bit like that, and then I won't use that because I'll wreck that one. Or you can get the one that doesn't have the perforations, and you can pull off a long piece. If you want to, I know you can get this online, so if you want to take a photo of it and Google it, if you want it, look, it does make grafting so much easier. So if someone can take a photo of those, that's the one with the, which one is it? Yeah, that one here with the green writing underneath says 70 millimetre, that's where the length of the serrations are. That one doesn't have any of the serrations, so that'll give you a longer shoot. Okay. Good grafting knife. Now this is a Japanese one I may have bought here at the club. It's really, really well worth, very sharp. But you don't need this knife necessarily. You can use standard grafting knives. You can get it any sort of nursery, that sort of thing. Usually used for grafting roses, etc. That's pretty good too. I've kept that sharp, so that can work. We'll need some of this later, and we'll need that. I'll tell you why we need all these as we go through it. Those. That. Oh, what I have got, you won't get one of these, but I had a friend who in the workshop where I used to work, and he made up this magic little grafting thing for me. I don't know where he got that from, probably fairly standard, but he machined these little things here. Now, I didn't see those, Dave. Does that show up? Sort of, you can see that sort of scooped out little sort of spoon sort of thing. That's very sharp edges on it. So he made three sizes. So the size, you can pick the size you want depending on the size of the seal you're putting in. So let's assume we're going to put in a long seal, so I'll pick the biggest, the biggest seal, and that just screws in here. I mean, you won't get one of these, but I thought I'd show off and just say, look at what I've got. You haven't got one of these, I've got one. Okay, so what it does, and I'll just show you what it does. So we all know we're trying to match up a scion, which is, let's get the scion. Probably this one will do. Pluck out some, make it the end of it. Maybe I'll go for a longer piece here. We'll go for that piece. Okay. So we just take out some of those old needles there. And we don't need all that foliage off the top there, so we'll just shorten that back. So that's our scion. And a good grower stick them in the mouth, keep them nice and humid. You can't hear me talk if I do that. So what you do, you say, okay, this is the size of the scion. That's about the same size as that little scoop there. So then you come along, and I'll just show, I'm not going to sort of tie this one onto the branch, but you come along, and you always want to graft, the tree's growing that way, so you don't want to graft with the bud growing back. So the tree's growing that way, so the bud we want to put in has got to be going in that direction as well, yeah? We don't want it going back into the tree. I think it can be done, but it's not the way the sap of the tree will really want to go, so it's probably less likely to work. So you're going to go in and you're going to scoop. Now I'll probably take my finger out here. So that sort of takes out yeah, it's probably enough. I'll go a little bit longer. I should have actually. Let's look at a chair. Jamie, can we get a chair up here? I can just stand this on so it's a bit not as hard to reach. So I've done a little cut with this thing in here. And that's about the width of the scion I've got, or scion. There we go, that's probably about 10 or 12 mils long. Pull that out. Thanks, mate. So then you get your, you could use this, or you can use this little, it's almost like a medical scalpel. And this is not the order you'd normally do this in, but just for the sake of it. Quite a sharp little blade, so you get yourself a piece of wood or plastic or something like that. You do a long cut on the top, like so, and a short cut here. Okay, so that's what we've got. Long cut, short cut, and then that just, in theory, should be about the same width as what we've cut there. We slip that in with the long cut on the woods, on the tree side, and that just slips in there. If it's not quite the width, you've got to match up one side at least, so that sits in there, and then we wrap it up with this plastic and away we go. But you won't all have one of these little guys, so we'll do it with the equipment you can easily get.
Question, why do you prefer to have the curvature?
I'm not sure what you mean, Mel. What do you mean? I'm not
Why
sure.
do you prefer the curvature of the cup compared to a straight scalpel cup?
I guess what's a little bit, Dave, it's just down there, the little cutter. Yep. The reason is, Mel, it's exactly the same size as the scion I'm putting in. Whereas if I use the this thing, I will get a different size. Using this is fine, but you match it up on one side. Here I can probably match it up on both sides. That's the reason. Do a lid for that somewhere, I'll turn up in a minute. Alright, so I'm just gonna, is this gonna be visible if I put it on here? Can you see alright? Okay, that's gonna be easy to work on. So I'm not gonna, well I can tape that up later. It don't make any difference. I don't think they're gonna take this time of year. So what we now need to do is get ourselves all prepared. I've got that. Don't need that. Got my tape. Here we go. You can see I'm a really well organised worker. That one goes there. Where'd my serrated tape go? Oh, thanks, Dave. Just seeing if he's on the job. Just checking he's with it. All right. So, we need a scion. I'm going to try and put it on, well, we got that one in there. I'll still put it on. Yeah, it's going to be easier there. Actually, I put it on that bottom one. I'll just strip this out so you can see. better. I mean, I think we're all a bit, and I know I certainly was, all a bit reluctant to have a grafting. It seems like a really tricky thing to do. But, you know, if you think about it, yes, you're not going to get every 100% take, but the more you do, obviously the better you're going to get at it.
Do you use the same technique for junipers?
Yes. All right, let's get the seam. We'll get a nice long one, give us a bit to play around with. So, got the seam. Strip out all the old needles there. Cut these shorter. The good reason for cutting these shorter is several. I can actually fit the tape over the top of it. It also lessens a bit of the moisture that's required. So we get our bit of stuff, we put it in our mouth the way we should. What do you say? Stretch it out. Okay, then we wrap it up. So we get our tape and we just start it a bit below where the needles are. Pull it reasonably tight. It's good to be a bit dexterous at doing this. It's clearly I'm not. I've stuffed that one up. I put it in my mouth though, so it'll all work. Don't worry.
Is that like plumber's tape?
Sorry?
Is that similar to plumber's tape?
Plumber's tape?
Yeah, it's like
No, nothing like it. No. No, you've got to spend a lot of money to get it, Jamie. Sorry. So we wrap that around, stretching it as we go. Right around over the needles. And if I need an extra piece, I'll get an extra piece, and I will. Just a little twist at the top, like so. So all your foliage is wrapped up in there, so it can't really lose any moisture.
Now stick it in your mouth.
Yeah, well,
Looks like a joint, mate.
what do they call that, a spliff? Is that what they call it? Don't know why I knew that. Okay, so now we do our cut. We're going to go in there. I'm just measuring up where it's going to go. So we'll just do a long cut. Short cut. Okay, stick it in my mouth. Do this cut now with your knife here. I'm going to go on top. Okay, it's enough. Now line it up. And this is, Mel, this is only going to line up one side, right? Because I used the big knife. As long as it lines up one side, that's all you need. Then you get some more tape. Wrap it around the base.
How deep did you go into the tree? Was it about halfway?
Not quite halfway, probably a quarter to a third. Now sometimes you might pull the end of the tape back through there's a gap there to stop water getting in. You might pull some tape through there, but you can just put a little dab of this stuff, which is just a wound sealer just over the top there to stop the moisture getting in. This is good stuff. You don't have to use this, but it is pretty good. Just put it in the gap there, stop any moisture getting in. Okay, that's that. I might get someone to wash that out. Jamie, can you just wash this out? Just in a bit of water. Okay, so that's that, and then you don't want it slipping around the wing, so you just get some real little cable ties. Just tie it around the bottom there.
You don't use wire?
You could use wire if you wanted to, but this is a lot easier. You could use wire if you wanted to. So that's pretty firmly held on there. Now what happens is, now bear in mind you're doing this in mid-August. So in about 6 weeks, thanks Johnny, 6 weeks or so, you'll find that the needles themselves push out the top there. Push out the top, just open up the little twist at the top, they push out the top there, and you just let them do their thing, and maybe after a little while, when you're pretty convinced it's all sealed on there, firmly in place, you can reduce back some of the stock plant, which is the top there. So, easy to do. What did that take me? I don't know, 5-10 minutes tops. If you're good, you can probably do 30 or 40 in an afternoon. So you can redo a whole tree if you wanted to. Not the right time of year to do it. Yeah, Mel.
Could you say put the white pine onto that branch?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Mel's asked, could I put the white pine onto this? I could. Yeah, I could have brought a little scots that's been done on. Yes, you could. You could go around and graft every one of these branches up with a different pine. Now, some of them won't. I thought he may have been here tonight. Steve Gerald, some of you will know. Steve and I tried to graft black onto a maritime pine last year. Some of them took, but some didn't. So it's, obviously they are compatible to some degree, but some of them, they're probably not hugely compatible. Although maybe we just did bad grafts, that's probably a possibility as well. So some things will Peter, have you tried ever putting anything onto radiata, blacks onto radiata or anything? No, I don't know if it'll work. Like radiata's a 3-needle pine, there's a 2-needle pine, there's a 5-needle, 2-needle, 2-needle, 2-needle. So I'm not sure that would work.
The closer they are genetically, I think the greater the chance of being successful.
Yeah. So, black on black should work pretty well. It doesn't have to be this black onto that black, it could be that black onto this black. You'll probably, if you go to the nurseries, you'll find Yatsubusa, small needle black, quite often grafted onto a seedling black. And Barry's got a whole heap of seedling blacks over there. Whites, Brian O'Brien has a lot of success, well not so much success with whites on blacks, but he puts whites onto Walliciata, which is one of the American whites. But this white here has been grafted onto black. So yeah, whites onto black will work. I would think for my purposes, I'm not really wanting to grow up quite small seedling stuff and then graft a white or a black onto that and then grow it big. But for my purposes, I might have a long branch with nothing on it till about there. I can then graft back in there so that I can take the foliage back in closer. That's where I would see me grafting. But others. But it's not hard to do. And yes, you won't get them all to take straight away, but basically match it up on one side. This stuff makes it really easy. I mean, you can do it. I mean, the first tree I ever did some grafting on, actually sold it tonight, had a graft on it, and I put the graft on. I did it with this sort of thing. Then I put a bit of sphagnum moss around the base to keep the humidity in a lunch bag sort of thing. Tied all that on. So time consuming. You do 3 in an afternoon tops, whereas this you can maybe get 30 or 40 in an afternoon, and with a better strike rate. So yeah, August is the time to do that. It'll be interesting. I'll leave this on to see if it takes. It's the wrong time of year, but you never know. It might take. This one I'm not even going to tie up. That won't take. I should do it just for the sake of it. I will. It's been out of my mouth too long ago. So yeah, I think grafting is where we should be trying to really go here in Australia, is to improve. And it doesn't have to be pines. It could, like David said, it could be a juniper, could be certainly a lot of our deciduous trees you can graft.
Would you graft onto a trunk, or would you only graft onto branches?
Okay, let's answer that once I get this tied on. So David's asked me, would I graft onto you mean onto this sort of trunk?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I have some shimpaku that I would like to graft itoigawa onto.
Yes.
But I don't know if I should grow out the shimpaku branches first and then graft itoigawa, or just graft itoigawa straight into the trunk.
How thick is your trunk?
Trunk would be similar thickness to that section that you're going to gin.
Here?
Yeah.
And it's... Look, yeah, you could do it. You could even graft pines onto this, but I don't have the right thing here tonight. You'd get a chisel. You get a chisel here, maybe even a hammer. This job that I did with this tool, where I went in there, you do that with a hammer and chisel, and then try and match your signs. But a lot harder, obviously. You got fairly. Yeah, Brian.
It's a lot harder to graft onto the trunk itself. It's much easier with the sapphire to do the branches that are similar size of graft. Very difficult on a big thick trunk.
It can be done, but as Brian said, really tricky. If I was you, I'd be trying to graft onto the branches you've got and do it that way.
Or what about an approach graft?
Approach graft, like I said on this one, that was an approach graft. This down here was. It was quite I think it came from here, and you brought it around there. So an approach graft, you're taking like a channel out there, you're taking a sliver of bark off the branch there, tying it in together and waiting for it to take.
Is that going to be more successful in the styles because it's not been severed?
They both depend on really matching up at least one side. Obviously you can get a bigger piece quicker because you're swinging around quite a big piece to graft on. I think both are probably equally successful if done correctly. This gives you more. I mean, if I just want to go back into here, I can put more shoots in there. Probably this might be, if you want it, rather than trying to graft into that, this might be more successful. But you've got to have that branch in the right place to pull around and tie in there. So, yeah. But anyhow, what else something I didn't cover? Yeah.
Have you ever tried thread graft with black pine?
I haven't, no. I don't know how that'd work. Anybody tried it, thread grafting on pines?
I have seen one person do it, Graham Rose hasn't, and he was using radiata.
Okay.
And he was putting a bit larger hole than you might expect. But then wrapping the needles
like that, yeah.
So that you could get it through the wood, wrapping it with a bit of black wrap, nice and tight, so that you can put it through a bit of a wedge to hold it in shape.
So you understand what Peter's saying there? The thread graft, you've got to get the whole needles through. It's not like a deciduous maple where it's lost all its leaves and just got a few little buds to get through. You've got the whole, so you've got to tie it up fairly tight and then push it through, and you can't have it flopping around, so you've got to put a wedge to hold it in the hole, all that sort of stuff. But look, I've never tried it, maybe it does work. The other thing good hygiene, get yourself some, and this is not for me, I'm pretty clean, but this is for your tools. Bit of rubbing alcohol, if you're going from one tree to another, just rub your tools with this. I'm actually, I notice a lot, not a lot, but when you come to sale days and things like that, a lot of figs have got a virus problem. And I say to people that you should be throwing it away. Shane, you should be throwing it away.
I know.
But people don't, so the virus just gets transferred from one to another to another. So, especially if you're working with my figs now, I do make sure I clean the tools from going from one fig to another. It's probably good hygiene to practice with all your trees. I won't say I'd always do it, but I should, but I don't always do it. So hygiene. So there you go, that's easily got from the chemist, that's easily got online, I think it's, what is it, ATS tree wound dressing. You can get white, green or brown. And this grafting tape, it's a real...
It's called buddy tape.
Buddy tape, yeah. Buddy, not budding, buddy. Buddy, okay.
It's Dave Club, big buy a box of it.
Right.
So if people are interested, save all the postage.
Yep.
It's called a black pine because the mature growth is the trunks are black.
Oh, okay. It's just as said, it's a black pine because on a mature one the trunks are black.
It's thunder or whatever it is not afterwards.
Yeah,
It's Swedish.
yes. I've got lots of black trunks, but it's from Sooty Mulder. Yeah. Yeah, Jared.
When with the workshop coming up next week, can you tell people a little bit about how to avoid breaking needles?
You mean while they're wiring, that sort of thing?
While they're handling their pipes, they're going to be cleaning out their pipes during the week and things like that.
Yeah, okay. So what Jared's saying, it can be tricky, and I'm sure once you especially you go through needle bucking, you're trying to get in close, and that's where someone asked, I think it was Maria, about doing your hands. You go and you bend the needles, and you don't necessarily break them, but a week later you see all these half the needle has gone a straw colour because it's been broken. Not that it's a huge issue, but it's unsightly. Usually I know we had Boone out there. Was it Boone who came out with our club? I don't know how long ago. I was helping Brian needle pluck or clean up a white. We were just hammering away in here. He got most upset. Oh, you've got to come from underneath and do it from underneath and all. It's not. It sounds good, but it's really quite hard to get in underneath and pluck out. Try and be careful of the needles because you want the tree looking good, and you can certainly damage the needles. It's not going to do the tree damage, but once again, it's cosmetics. It doesn't look good, and particularly on whites, they can needle very soft. They can get damaged quickly. These not quite so bad. Who's thinking of coming along on Sunday? That's good. So we've got a few people. Well, do the work you think you can do yourself at home, and that way you'll get more done on the day with the help from whoever's helping here. I think that's all I've got to say. Any other questions? Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, I've got a question. I had Scots pine for about 18 months. It didn't show any break or anything, and it just sort of went nuts. Would that be incorrect feeding, watering, or is that a character of the Scots pine?
So it went nuts eventually.
Yeah, and someone said to me Scots pines can do that, I don't know. Watering or feeding or...
Well, probably feeding. I mean, I still reckon watering is the real key in whatever we grow. Did you change your watering regime from one season to another? I mean, I know it wasn't this year this happened, but this has been a really hard summer, really tough summer. And the mixes we're using generally, I think you can throw as much water as you like at them, they'll be fine. I don't know, Andrew, what yours would. I'd be suggesting, okay, watering or feeding could be the issue. I assume you've been growing them in the same spot, not in shade one time and sun another time. No, I can't give you an answer. I think it'd be watering and or feeding. Might be the answer. I don't know. Any other questions? Yeah, James. Oh, okay. I did mention Confidor, which I like to use. You can't get Confidor as such, but the chemical is imidacloprid, is obtainable online. 250 litre bottle.
Milliliter.
What's that? That's not 250. Yeah, what did I say? No, maybe it's a litre. It's a litre bottle. Yeah, so it's about 3 times that size. Sure. No, what's it called? Something or other. Just Google imidacloprid. It's a really strong thing. I bought 2 bottles of a litre, and then I read the concentration, and I actually bought to make up 2,000 buckets of the stuff. I'm never going to need 2,000 buckets. So I gave one away.
Is it an Australian stock? It's not actually.
No, I think it's coming from Sydney somewhere. Yeah, you'll get it very quickly. The other one is, the rich grow one, the granular one. That works to some degree.
Bug killer.
Sorry, bug killer. Yeah, I think I tend to use that more as a preventative rather than a curative, and you can't obviously spray it on the foliage. So it doesn't hurt to have both, the bug killer granules and the imidacloprid. I think it's sure, something or other. I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, don't buy 2 bottles. You won't need it in your whole life. You won't. Sorry?
Super white?
That's the one, I think. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
On the cypress I had scale, white scale or something, or some bug.